Just over 20 days to go for the start of the much awaited 2020 Tokyo Olympics, and with 29th June being the cut-off date for qualification, we've got a few last-minute entries among Indians. Dutee Chand has qualified for the Olympics. There's also Aditi Ashok, the golfer. Seema Punia has qualified. We've also got two swimmers, but there's also been setbacks with Hima Das failing to qualify in the individual events at least. There's also Rohan Bopanna and Divid Sharan who could not qualify for this the Tokyo Olympics in the men's doubles event, meaning India will only field one team at the Tokyo Olympics in tennis, with Sania Mirza and Ankita Raina competing in the women's doubles draw. Now, also speaking of setbacks, and due to Tokyo and Japan's travel guidelines, 11 countries including India have been given separate travel guidelines that basically include any athletes who are traveling from India. They'll need to self-quarantine for 3 days before leaving for Tokyo. They'll have to undergo daily COVID tests for 7 days before their departure for Tokyo. But the most problematic of their guidelines, of course, is the fact that all the athletes flying down from India into Tokyo are expected to physically distance from the rest of the teams at the Olympics Games village for the first 3 days. Now, this of course will prove to be a little bit of a problem, considering there's only one there's only one training facility, there's only one dining hall. So are India's athletes, along with the other 10 countries, expected to be in their room for 3 days, which of course will be a big problem, because they're all going to be, they're all prepared for the Olympics to reach Japan in top form. So being confined to their rooms for 3 days is going to be an extremely big setback. The IOA, of course, is in discussions with the IOC and of course the organizers regarding this. So we will be getting you updates on this as well. In fact, just to avoid this situation, MC Mary Kom will now be flying down to Italy to join the rest of the Indian boxing contingent, where they have been training. Mary, of course, was training at the Army Institute in Pune. She'd chosen to do so for personal reasons, she said, but now, since these travel guidelines issued by Japan don't apply to Indian athletes who have been training abroad and will land in Tokyo from other countries, so then Mary has chosen to now fly to Italy and join the rest of the Indian boxing contingent, who will then fly straight to Tokyo instead of making a stopover in India, and therefore avoid any confusion about the 3-day quarantine that the athletes are expected to do. Also, the draw in boxing has been released, and of course India's Amit Pangal has been seeded number 1 in the men's 52 kg category. 8 of the 9 Indian boxers who are going to be competing in Tokyo have been seeded, including MC Mary Kom, who's 7th in the 51 kg category. And also joining the Indian contingent in Tokyo will now be Dutee Chand. She's qualified in the 100 and the 200 meter events for Tokyo. Unfortunately, she didn't qualify by way of making the cut in the way that there's a qualification timing for both of the races. Dutee couldn't make that mark, but based on her world rankings, she has now got a ticket to Tokyo. Unfortunately, though, Hima Das has not managed to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics in the individual events. At least she of course runs the 400 meter, in which she won the gold in the under 20 world championships. But also she did try out in the 200 and the 100 meter races, but she couldn't make the qualification mark, also because she injured herself at the trials in Patiala over the last week. Hima, of course, now stands one sole chance of competing in Tokyo as part of India's 4x400 meter mixed relay team. That means there'll be 2 men and 2 women running in that team. But of course, with Hima injured, and in fact she insisted on running despite her injury at the trial. So let's see what effect that has, and it all depends on the federation on who they choose to have a run in that race. But there's great news from Indian swimmers, with Sajan Prakash becoming the first ever Indian to make the Olympics A qualification mark in qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics. Accompanying him will be Sri Hari Nataraj, who's also qualified. Aditi Ashok will be traveling for her second Olympics. The golfer was just 18 years old at the Rio Olympics. She was the youngest golfer at the Rio Olympics, but now this time she will go as sort of a pro there. All of these stories, in fact, all the stories of all our athletes qualifying, all their journeys, all their struggles, every stories on everyone who helped them, all of these you can see and read about on the Quint website. So do go over to the sports page, and we have all the news and updates for you.